Welcome to Chapter 5 of Thoughts to Die For. Chapter 5 is entitled Unnecessaries. It took me a long moment to catch my breath. My eyes raked the surrounding brush from where I lay in sparkling gravel. Where was the thing that had growled at me? Grabbing a hold of a nearby branch, I stood, realizing that I'd been blown off the trail and hurled into a directional sign. The sign was overgrown with foliage. Was this a coincidence, or did someone or something deliberately blow me into it? Either way, I didn't want to stick around to find out. I pulled back branches, blocking the floating in mid-air sign, and read it. This way to the Sifters ceremony. An arrow at the bottom of the sign pointed in the direction of an ominous mass in the distance. Trembling, I stepped into the clearing and rushed toward it, all the while looking back over my shoulder. The crater was large enough to hold the water of hundreds of swimming pools, and its rim jutted 6 or 7 stories above ground. Loud plopping sounds erupted from above, and bucket-sized globules of water dropped like bombs around me. Mud sucked at my sneakers. Craning my neck back, I saw, at the top of the crater's rim and all around its edges, bleachers filled with spectators. Flashes of multicolored light whipped through darkness, and the bleachers vibrated. Unrecognizable forms soared in circles above me. An explosion shook the soggy ground, sending ripples through puddles. I slipped. Gazing up from where I lay in mud, I watched bursts of smoke form the phrase, "Welcome, Thought Sifters," across the sky. Humming and chanting erupted from the bleachers. The night came alive with light, as though the sun had mistaken midnight for morning. Intoxicated by the excitement I now felt, I searched for a way up. Oh, the task was beyond laborious. With each step, I sank past my ankles into mud. Repeatedly, my sneakers were sucked from my feet. Digging them out again and again wasted time. Leaving them behind, I grew numb-toed from the cold as I walked around the base of the crater. Unable to find a way to the top, I tried to climb up the sides. This was futile. With each step forward, I slipped 2 steps back. Time to try Plan B. Oh, I wished I'd had one. Just then I noticed a flamingo-pink, transparent bubble the size of a compact car floating toward me, its floodlight blinding. My heart raced. I felt the way I imagined an escaped convict might feel. There was a loud cracking noise, and someone spoke. The voice carried as though sent over a megaphone. "Hold on! Be right there! Duck!" came a female voice with a sort of British-sounding accent. As the strange vehicle neared, I saw the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen sitting inside. I couldn't decide which one of them was more awe-inspiring, the vehicle or the girl. The craft came to a stop and hovered above the mucky ground beside me. The girl passed right through the side of the vehicle. She smiled, and I swallowed hard. "Oh no, you missed the crater! Doesn't happen often, but it does happen," she said, floating toward me. Her hair, the color of sunlight, blew softly in the honeysuckle-scented breeze. Wind pressed her shimmering pink dress, hugged the curves of her body. I felt the flush travel up my neck. Speechless, I could do nothing but stare. "Are you okay? Nothing broken, I hope," she said, passing her hand over me. "Oh, thank goodness," she said, giving me no time to respond. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the bubble. I barely noticed that I, too, was now floating. "You look a bit in shock. Must have been a dreadful fall," she said, looking up toward the bleachers. I hadn't heard a word, my eyes affixed to her glistening lips. "I'm Sarabella," she said, extending her hand. Holding her hand for a moment, I tried desperately to remember my name, as if it really mattered. Levi," I stuttered at last. I'm Levi." "He speaks. Bravo, Levi, she said teasingly. Good name. Great name. Someone in your gene line must have been a great levitator, I'm guessing. Thus the name, Levi. Mesmerized by everything about her, I nodded yes and then no, without having heard what she'd asked. Hop in, I'll take you back up. I'm assuming this'll be your first time in an aeroplane, she said, as an enormous water globule narrowly missed her. My first, I said, covering my head. A water bomb the size of a beach ball crashed just inches away. 10 more riddled the aeroplane in rapid succession. Mud splattered and my eardrums throbbed painfully as each exploded. Duck, Levi! Crater slippage isn't likely to kill you, but it can knock you out or give you a killer migraine, she warned belatedly. Still holding her hand and therefore still floating, I searched for a door as we approached the strange vehicle. Sarabella gracefully entered the way she exited. Our hands parted, and I sank into mud past my ankles. Excuse me, Sarabella, but, is there an easier way to get inside? She giggled. Oh, just get in. It's easy. Easy for you. I really think I need a door. I knocked again. Well, why are you thinking that? She asked, rolling her eyes and tossing her delicate, manicured fingernails through the air, as if she couldn't be bothered with such inconsequentialities. Reaching through the vehicle, she pulled me inside. Slurping sounds and peeling sensations overtook me as I passed through the door. I felt cold and then hot, then mushy. It was like I'd melted and become solid again. If I hadn't experienced this firsthand, I wouldn't have believed such a thing possible. There are always doors, Levi. You'll have to learn how to maneuver dimensions to find them. Things aren't really solid. Everything's just pieces of vibrating light. She tossed me a hot pink towel, then fastened a seatbelt across her body, then another, and yes, another. She motioned for me to do the same. Vibrating light, huh? I laughed nervously as I studied the web of belts that secured her like a black widow's snack. 2 straps crossed her body vertically. 1 crossed her chest diagonally, and 2 more crossed over her thighs. Just when I thought there were no more, she buckled another across her waist. I twisted and tangled my own belts, all the while maintaining a nonchalant, I'm a guy and I've got this handled facade. I felt like a complete moron, but I buckled the belts. I'm sure I did it all wrong because my body ached, and unfortunately for me, she noticed. Are you comfortable like that? She asked, staring at me worriedly. I'm fine, I snapped, my voice sharp and higher than usual. It's just you're turning a lovely shade of rigor mortis purple. We could loosen those. She reached toward me. Thanks, but I'm good, I lied, intending to loosen a strap, but tightening it even more. Gasping in pain, unkind thoughts rushed my head. Oh my, you're angry, she whispered. Can you hear my thoughts? I asked urgently, hoping she couldn't. I can. I can also feel your feelings, she confessed, applying another layer of glistening pink lipstick. But how? We're not in a half dimension, are we? You're not dreaming, if that's what you're asking. All dimensions above 9 are telepathic. We're in 11. I had no idea what she was talking about and hated the fact that she could hear my thoughts. She waved her hand over the control panel. Top of the crater, please. The aeroplane shot straight up. It landed smoothly on an indigo-blue marble deck. If not for the seatbelts, I'm convinced I would have blasted through the roof. Sarabella smiled. She pressed a shiny red button that released the belts. My thirsty veins and arteries stung as blood rushed in. That was an unpleasant ride, I thought. Sarabella cocked her head and pouted apologetically in my general direction. I could only assume she'd heard my complaint. If the top of the crater looked exciting from the ground, it was nothing compared to what it was like being there. Painted bodies danced around bonfires. Silhouettes soared across the night sky. Vibrations caused by overzealous drummers and singers sent ripples across the surface of the crater water. I couldn't help noticing everyone's attire. So many clashing designs, colors, and symbols annoyed me. Some wore tall hats and tie-dyed robes, while others wore knee-high socks neon short shorts, and crocheted ponchos with bells and chimes. The only piece of clothing that looked remotely familiar was a black t-shirt worn by a child with the words "Son of a Sifter" printed in reflective gold across the front. I wondered if these were costumes or if they really dressed this way. "A little of both," answered Sarabella, without my having asked. "Welcome to Cirrus, Levi," she said, as she pulled me out of the aeroplane the same way she pulled me in. A deep, captivating voice, sounding as though it had been sent over a loudspeaker, filled the air, and the crowd fell silent. Sarabella grabbed my arm and towed me to a front row seat on the bleachers. "Let's sit here. Our master of ceremonies is about to speak," she said, pointing. My eyes surveyed the crowd. "Do you mean the tall guy over there with the silver hair?" I asked, pointing. "Yes, that's him. Elton Hemphilius III, more commonly known as Hemp," she answered. I studied him from the top of his silver ponytailed head to the bottom of his multicolored toe sock-wearing Hirachi-sandaled feet. He climbed a podium at the center of the deck and perched himself upon it. "We are gathered here today to welcome a group of high school sophomore thought-sifters eager to participate in our universally acclaimed, life-transforming Selective Thought Studies program," he bellowed. Wild applause erupted at his words. After a long minute he continued. "Each of you has subliminally requested and consciously accepted our invitation to study here at the Universe City of Ceres, where we ensure that every sifter be given the opportunity to claim their natural given right to joy, freedom, and the manifestation of their wildest dreams. Let the dimension surfing begin." The crowd roared. Hemp tore off his socks and sandals, jumped down from the podium, and did a spectacular backflip into the crater. Streams of sparkling pink water washed across the marble deck. It was a breathtaking sight. The temperature-sensitive deck transitioned through various shades of blue and green as water washed across it. The crowd continued to roar as Hemp exited the crater and danced across the deck. Ugh, what have I gotten myself into? "Fun, Levi. You've gotten yourself into a lot of fun. You're going to love it here," said Sarabella. I could feel my eyebrows roll into a question mark. A magnificent hum rose from the bleachers. Everyone was suddenly chanting the word "yes." Sarabella explained the creative power of words, and specifically the word "yes." She said something about how the very mention of the word opens portals. I had no idea what this meant, and I was feeling too overwhelmed to think about it at the moment. From the corner of my eye, I watched a chubby older woman, sporting a long red frock, fill a sizable bottle with water from the crater. As she drank the glittery liquid, her face stiffened, and she gagged. Within seconds, and right before my eyes, she grew younger and thinner. "But I don't want to be younger or thinner," I blurted, without realizing I said it aloud. "Then don't drink bottles of crater water, stupid. Besides, it only gives you what you think you need." I wasn't sure if I heard someone say this or if I'd thought it. My eyes scoured the faces of those seated on the bleachers for a clue. A cantankerous old man with a patch over his eye and a golden cast on his arm smirked at me. "Was that you?" I thought. The man laughed. Sarabella nudged me. "He's deaf, in body and mind." "Oh," I said flatly, unconvinced. "Let's join the others," said Sarabella, pointing to a stretch of bleachers where about 30 new arrivals sat, wrapped in fluffy neon green robes, sipping steaming cups of chai. Sarabella and I wove our way through the rows, with lots of excuse-me's and hellos, until we found an unoccupied spot of bleacher. Chatter filled the air. I looked the others over. There was nothing odd about them. The only difference between us, as far as I could tell, was that they had robes and I didn't. Oh, and they weren't covered with mud. Who did they... how... I began incoherently. Luckily, my thoughts must be clearer than my words, because Sarabella knew what I was asking. Yes, they burned their invitations, just like you did, she answered. I felt a sense of camaraderie now. I was no longer the lone, paranoid and delusional invitation burner. There were rows upon rows of us. Sarabella excused herself. A few minutes later she returned with 2 steaming cups of chai and 2 oversized vegan chocolate chip cookies for us. I thanked her and devoured both. They were delicious. Just then a loud guttural horn sounded. They're coming! They're coming! Sifters are coming! The second batch is starting to cross. You were in the first, said Sarabella. The sense of camaraderie I felt began to fade. I hadn't arrived as the others had. I was about to tell her when she shushed me. Hemp began reading names from a scroll he pulled from the pocket of his pants. The first name called from batch number 2 was Garby Vanderlyn. I scanned the crowd, searching for this Garby. A scream cut through the air. At first it was a small, faraway scream, but grew louder. When I noticed the other sifters with their necks bent back looking skyward, I, too, looked skyward. There, in the once festive but now darkened sky, I saw something, or someone, falling from it. That something splashed mightily into the crater, and everyone cheered. I put my hands together and clapped silently to blend in. What was that? I asked, blown away by what I thought I had just seen. That's a sifter, Garby Vanderlyn. I think that is his name, said Sarabella, her mouth stuffed with cookie. What? They just fall from the sky like that? I asked, my neck bent to the point of discomfort. Sarabella nodded. Well, that has to hurt. If he was traveling as fast as I was upon entry, the fall at that speed would kill him, I thought. This reasoning made me wonder how I survived the fall. Physics, said Sarabella. We've made a few atmospheric adjustments that slow the velocity of entry. Otherwise, yes, the fall could kill. But death is just a doorway. Shooting her an unpleasant look, I tried not to think about how increasingly violated I felt at her knowing my thoughts. And doorway or not, I wasn't interested in dying just yet. Hemp continued to read names from the scroll, and bodies continued to fall from the sky into the crater. Penelope Aubrey, Edel Cartel, Kristen Patterson, Callie Burns, Shane Fargone, Dylan Candle. My eyes strained to catch a glimpse of them dropping. By the looks on their faces, it was apparent not everyone experiences dimension surfing the same way. Some looked elated with wide, wondrous eyes and smiles. Others personified fright and shook uncontrollably. I heard plenty of screaming, whether from joy or fear was difficult to tell, but the one thing they all seemed to have in common, the one small detail I could not ignore, was the fact that they were all naked as they exited the crater. I was certain they'd been clothed when they dropped from the sky. What happened to their clothes? I whispered, tucking my shirt into my jeans and tightening up my belt a notch as though this would prevent my clothes from vanishing. Crater water dissolves unnecessaries, said Sarabella, sipping chai. I sat speechless for a moment, contemplating this. So, are you saying clothes are unnecessary? I asked, stuffing my hands inside the pockets of my jeans. The water thinks so. That doesn't mean we all run around naked. We can choose not to follow the water's advice. Contemplating the idea that water could speak or think was mind-boggling. This was a bizarre ritual, and I had mixed feelings about being part of it. Part of me thought it would be fun to fall from the sky into the gigantic crater of purple, clothes-dissolving, opinionated water. But the rational part of me dreaded the thought. Still, I couldn't help reconsidering when I saw soul guards greet the sifters as they exited the steamy crater. Dressed in bright orange board shorts, matching hats, and footwear resembling flip-flops, the guards quickly wrapped each new arrival in a plush lime green robe and handed them a gear-filled bag and steaming cup of tea. This was quite different from the welcome I'd received. I reassured myself that although the sifters were naked as they exited the crater, the soul guards were adept at wrapping the robes. A few minutes later, as the soul guard was about to wrap up one particular slight boy, the robe fell from his hands. It was at that moment I changed my mind and decided to avoid all potential humiliation by just viewing the ritual as any other audience member. Then, Hemp read the list of the missing. Levi Levy is the only absent sifter. What could have happened to this Levi Levy fellow? He whispered too close to the microphone. Again, Hemp called my name. Crouching on the bleachers, I hid partially behind Sarabella, wishing they'd crossed my name off the list. After all, I was already there. Has anyone seen Levi Levy? Levi, he's calling you, snapped Sarabella, tossing her blanket. She grabbed my hand and waved it high in the air in Hemp's general direction. Here he is, she shouted. Beautiful or not, at that moment I thought of at least 10 terrible things I could do to her. I settled for yanking my arm from her grip. I dashed up the bleachers out of sight, and she followed me. What's the matter? Don't you want to cleanse yourself like the others? Look at you, you're covered with mud. Hiding behind a group of wild spectators, I yanked the baseball hat from where I'd attached it earlier to my jeans and put it on. I pulled it over my eyes and shook my head vehemently. No. A surge of unpleasant thoughts raided my head. Sarabella slid in beside me. Her eyes darted to the hat. Where'd you get that? Tell me immediately. You're pretty but way too bossy, I thought, just before telling her about how I acquired it and the boy to whom it belonged. I am not bossy, and thanks for thinking I'm pretty, but please tell me you're joking about the hat. Do you have any idea to whom it belongs? She asked, her mouth dangling open. I was about to answer when I heard a bellowing. Where in the world is Levi Levy? Sarabella ripped the baseball hat from my head and tossed it onto the bleachers. It fell some 20 feet below. Oh dear, she cried, looking back and forth between the direction of Hemp's voice and the hat. She grabbed my arm again and started waving it like crazy. Here! Levi Levy is here! He entered through the doors, she yelled, as if that explained everything. I hadn't told her I'd entered through the doors. Please stop it, I insisted in a serious voice, ripping my arm from her grip. But it was too late. Hemp's eyes moved swiftly and directly upon me. He made his way through the crowd, stood before me, and peered at me over titanium-rimmed eyeglasses. Pleasure to meet you, Levi, he said, extending his hand. The bolero sleeve of his white gauze shirt flapped as we shook. Hemp's hand was twice the size of mine, but for as large and intimidating as it looked, I sensed an unmistakable kindness when I stood to grasp it. Is it true you came through the doors, boy, or did you miss the crater? I came through the doors, but it's not like I planned it, I admitted apologetically. That's fine, Levi, my lad, not to worry. It's just, and he paused as if to find the right words, a rare phenomenon. He smiled and pointed toward the water. You're the last in. Do I have to? I asked. I mean, is the whole crater thing mandatory? Hemp slipped his hands inside the pockets of his tie-dyed balloon pants. Crater cleansing is an important segment of the initiation, Levi. It feels wonderful. I guarantee you won't want to get out once you're in. Of course I won't. Who wants to parade around naked in front of thousands? You won't want to get out because it feels incredible. For your peace of mind, please rest assured knowing that we've placed a visual distortion barrier at the exit point. It blurs details. Hemp winked and skipped away. I felt relieved by this piece of information, but frustrated with the whole telepathy thing. Knowing others could hear my thoughts had me feeling vulnerable at best, violated at worst. Can everyone hear my every thought? We're all telepathic to different degrees. Natural laws vary. There are oodles of exceptions, said Sarabella. Really? How does that work? I asked acerbically. Well, some are better at it than others, she said, twirling a chunk of satiny hair between her fingers. Some only hear what you want them to hear, while others hear everything. Some have to be physically close, while others can hear across dimensions. It depends on a variety of factors, including astrological and karmic connections. That's how you were found, she said, unscrewing lids from 2 clear bottles. labeled Ginger Mindfire, and handing one of them to me. She returned our empty ceramic teacups to the concession stand. I pretended to understand the arbitrary laws of thought snooping. "There are some thoughts I don't want others to hear," I said, taking a swig of my chilled to perfection carbonated drink, with just the right amount of fizz. No sense worrying about it, Levi. It'll drive you mad. Besides, most telepaths can hear only so many thoughts at once, particularly in a crowd. It's hard to know who's thinking what. You'll learn how to direct your thoughts and tune in better in selective thought studies. That's why you're here, right?" This was a very good question, and one I couldn't answer. Why am I here? I don't even know what selective thought studies is. I was bored with my life and tired of school. I woke up with the invitation. It said to burn it. I did, and here I am. "Right," said Sarabella. "I realize you feel a bit overwhelmed, but no worries. Everything will be all right." I wanted to be mad at her for hearing my thoughts, but she was being so reassuring. As I thought more about telepathy, I realized that while it has a downside, it definitely has an upside. Yes, it would be horrible if everyone knew my every thought, but I could think of several occasions when knowing the thoughts of others would come in handy. As I sat contemplating the pros and cons of telepathy, Sarabella's scent wafted across my face. Before I could control my mind wandered. Before I could control myself, my mind wandered. Does she have a boyfriend? Does she like me at all? Do her lips taste like cherries? Thoughts flooded my head so spontaneously that I didn't have time to process them, let alone edit them. No sooner had I realized that my thoughts were not under my control than they did it again. It would be so embarrassing if she knew I want to kiss her. Oh, please, tell me she didn't hear that. Sarabella burst into laughter. "What's so funny?" I asked, folding my arms across my chest and feeling mortified. "Did you hear what I was thinking?" "No, I wasn't tuned in," she giggled. "I was laughing at the game going on over there." Relieved, I turned to see what she was talking about and saw at least 24 players flying around the perimeter of the crater, yelling at one another. None of them had a ball, racket, or anything as far as I could tell. It was clear to me that I was observing a group of vest-wearing individuals flying recklessly through the air, yelling at one another. This is a game? I watched player after player plummet to the mud below. Within a short period of time, all were unrecognizable. I studied them, trying to understand this peculiar sport. Turning to Sarabella, I asked, "And that's funny because?" "Oh, it's hilarious for several reasons, Levi, none of which you'd understand at this point." I pressed her for an explanation. I wanted desperately to understand. She eyed me skeptically head to toe, then sighed dramatically. "Oh, all right. See the vests the players are wearing?" I nodded yes. "Well, they store thought energy. The purpose of the game is to get your opponents to sink to the mud by draining the energy from their vests while keeping your own vest charged." I leaned forward expectantly, waiting to hear more, but that's all she offered. "That's it?" I blurted, tossing my hands in the air. "Well, that's basically it." "How do you drain energy from someone's vest? Do you have to pull a plug or something?" "No, Levi. No plugs to pull." "What then?" I asked impatiently. "You send disempowering, pessimistic thoughts their way and hope they'll overpower their own thoughts. Negative thought energy drains the vests. Positive energy charges them. There are so many factors affecting the vests as there are models of them. There are as many factors affecting the vests as there are models of them. Some vests only store the vest wearer's thought energy. Training vests allow the thoughts of others to be stored. Still, other vests do other things." The game intrigued me. I had so many questions I wanted to ask, but a voice bellowed, startling us both. "Levi Levy, it's getting late. Please report for cleansing." The crowd grew restless. Patches of them chanted my name. Others stomped against bleachers. I felt the resulting vibration travel through my body. I imagined that this is what it must feel like to be a celebrity, and I must admit, it was unpleasant. "Levi to the crater! Levi Levy to the crater, please!" "I want to know more about the vests. I was hoping they'd forget about me," I said, as I climbed reluctantly down the bleachers. Maneuvering my way through the crowd, I reached the crater and stood at the water's edge. I hope the water doesn't find you unnecessary. Just get it over with." I examined the faces of those around me, unsure if these were my own thoughts. In any case, I jumped into the water. I tucked my legs up and did a backflip the same way Hemp had done. Every inch of my body tingled. My clothing dissolved in a sizzling froth as if someone dumped 100 bath fizzies into the crater beside me. My original plan was to jump in, swim as fast as I could toward the exit, and accept a robe without anyone catching so much as a flash of my blurred nakedness. But that's not what happened. The water was soothing, yet invigorating, calming, but thrilling. I opened my eyes underwater. I could have sworn I saw people laughing and talking through the sparkling pink and purple effervescent liquid. But when I reached out to touch them, no one was there. The water felt amazing, just like Hemp said it would. It was as though all my troubles dissolved, along with my clothing. "Hey, Mr. Dreamy, time's up. You've been in there half an hour. Get out now so I can eat dinner," said one of the soul guards, who then mumbled, "Why do I have to get the sensitive ones?" I swam toward the soul guard, who stood waiting with an impatient look on his face. I rushed the ladder, exited the crater, and thanked him when the robe enveloped me. The whole naked thing was a non-issue. I loved the way the plush lime green robe felt, soft, cozy, and the perfect temperature. It dried me instantly. On the left side, near the collar, silver thread, embroidered, "Levi Levy, Sifter." This robe is amazing. It feels like it just came out of the dryer, I thought. And so it should. The robes are ethereally engineered to adjust to the precise, normal body temperature of the person wearing them, said the soul guard. I tossed him a skeptical look. I wanted to be angry with him for eavesdropping in my thoughts, but I was too intrigued by the robe. Hemp waited for me near the bleachers. I practically floated across the now sapphire blue deck toward him. As I tightened the belt on my robe, I looked around at empty bleachers. I'd stayed in the water so long that, in addition to my fingertips being wrinkly, I was the only sifter left at the crater. The others had been paired and shuttled to their assigned cottages. Since I missed the last shuttle, Hemp offered me a lift and invited me over for a late-night snack. Of course I accepted. "I've got to grab a few towels. I'll meet you over there," said Hemp, pointing in the direction of an aeroplane awaiting me on the crater's bridge. As I walked toward it, I noticed that beside it stood an iridescent sage-green creature, no taller than a doorknob. "Snurr!" I yelled, running toward him. It's the end of Chapter 5.